Okay, so I guess we'll begin. It's 3 o'clock now. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Carol Forbes, and I'm the chair of First Presbyterian and Trinity Church Mission and Community Outreach Committee. I'd like to welcome everyone to the 7th annual Yamba Manley Lecture Series. The topic for this afternoon is Fabric of Our Community, a focus of earth, life, and healing. The Yamba Manley Lecture Series celebrates two esteemed scholars, Dr. Zachary Yamba and Dr. Robert Manley. Dr. A. Zachary Yamba, President Emeritus of Essex County College in Newark, New Jersey. Dr. Yamba is known for his extensive leadership that defines Essex County College. He's an unrelenting advocate for the power and promise of education. Dr. H. Manley, founder and president of the Center for Global Responsibility. He's a former professor of political science at Seton Hall University in South Orange, New Jersey, and one of the several Seton Hall University faculty members who laid down the foundation for Seton Hall School of Diplomacy and International Relations. He's an active member of First Presbyterian and Trinity Church. We are recording this event, so please remember to mute yourself and turn off your camera if you do not want to be recorded. During the discussion, you may place questions in the chat. I'd like to introduce Reverend Dr. Oberi Addo, who will be saying the invocation.
Good afternoon, please let us pray. The earth in all its fullness belongs to you. You are invisible, just, and holy above and beyond. You are so close to and with your creation. And so whatever name we as humans give to you, we tend to explicitly acknowledge you as the creator of the universe. For some, you are Ngulungulu. For some, you are Yah. For others, you are Olodumare. For other people, you are Ata Na Nyumo. For other people, you are known as Mau, while others know you as Odumankuma. For some, you are Ngewo, Kiteme, Allah, Honuonga, or Makete. We acknowledge your gift of the planet Earth. You created it and honored we as humans as co-creators. But like many other things you gave us, we have often messed up the earth through our greed, our consumerism, and our apathy. We gather here to remind ourselves of our responsibility to your creation and to cry for the healing of this planet in our own small ways. Remind us, oh great Mother Earth, great Annie, that none of us know the seed of our beginnings, and none of us know the moment of our end except you. We live in between times. Therefore, help us to be wise enough to number our days by taking care of this gift, Mother Earth. Amen and amen.
Thank you, Pastor Addo, and welcome to everyone. My name is Susan Haig, and I'm a member of the First Presbyterian and Trinity Church Mission and Community Committee. And it's my very great honor to introduce our first guest speaker, artist Bisa Bulter. And Miss Bulter is with us today on Zoom, and she'll participate in a Q&A later on in the program. Bisa Bulter was born in Orange, New Jersey, the daughter of Dr. Zachary Yamba, whom we thank as co-founder of this lecture series, and her mother, a French teacher. She was raised in South Orange and the youngest of 4 siblings. Butler's artistic talent was first recognized at the age of 4 when she won a blue ribbon in an art competition. Formally trained, Bulter graduated cum laude from Howard University with a bachelor's in fine art degree. And it was during her education at Howard that she was able to refine her natural talents under the tutelage of lecturers such as Lois Mayu Jones, Elizabeth Catlett, Jeff Donaldson, and Al Smith Jr. She began to experiment with fabric as a medium and became interested in collage techniques at Howard. Bisa Bulter then went on to earn a master's in art from Montclair State University in 2005. There she took a fiber arts class where she had an artistic epiphany, and she finally realized how to express her art. She says, as a child, I was always watching my mother and grandmother sew, and they taught me. After that class at Montclair, I made a portrait quilt for my mother on her deathbed, and I have been making art quilts ever since. Bisa Bulter was also a high school art teacher for 10 years in the Newark Public Schools and 3 years at Columbia High School in Maplewood, New Jersey. And we all wish we had been in her classes. Most recently in 2022, Bisa Bulter was awarded a Gordon Parks Foundation Fellowship and was awarded a United States Artist Fellowship in 2021. Her work was the focus of a solo exhibition at the Art Institute of Chicago, which was the second stop of a traveling exhibit, which began at the Katona Museum of Art in New York. Many museums and institutions have acquired Bisa Bulter's work, and I'd like to read all 14 of these museum names, because every time a museum acquires a new work, it is a huge process of acquisitions committees and discussions. So think of all these institutions that have dwelled on her works and accepted them. The Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture, the Smithsonian Museum of American Art and Renwick Gallery, the Perez Museum of Miami, the Art Institute of Chicago, the Museum of Fine Arts, Boston, the Nelson Atkins Museum, 21C Museum Hotels, the Kemper Museum of Art, the Orlando Museum of Art, the Newark Museum, the Toledo Museum of Art, the Minneapolis Institute of Art, the Hunter Museum of American Art, and the Los Angeles County Museum of Art. It is such a great honor and pleasure to introduce our esteemed guest artist, Bisa Bulter. And Bisa has very kindly developed a video that explains her artistry, her influences, and her journey to us. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Bisa Butler, and I'm so honored and pleased to be a part of the 7th annual Manley Yamba lecture series. I would like to extend a big thank you to the entire community at the First Presbyterian and Trinity Church. I'd especially like to thank Susan Hay for inviting me, and I'd like to thank all of you for joining us this afternoon. The first image that I would like to discuss is actually a very early artwork of mine, and it is a painting of what you see on the left-hand side of a young woman with a head wrap on, and on the right-hand side is a painting by one of my professors at Howard University. And I chose this to show how I started. My professors were very avant-garde for their time. Howard University had a curriculum where they were focused on creating an African American art aesthetic. And that art aesthetic included using bright and vibrant colors that they referred to as the Kool-Aid colors. This African American aesthetic consisted of using imagery that projected pride and dignity with African American clothing and hairstyles and facial features. I was very much influenced by these professors because they were always talking to us about our responsibility to show our people in the best possible light, which was not always the thing prior to the 1960s. The next image on the screen is another painting of mine, which is very much like one of the former professors at Howard University's work. Lois Mailloux Jones was a famous and world-renowned artist. She was a professor at Howard University, although not in my era. This was during the 1970s. And you can see her painting this time on the left-hand side, and then my painting on the right. The influence was very clear. I was impressed by the way Lois Mailloux Jones, an African American woman, traveled in Africa and was able to synthesize the patterns, the textures, even the symbols with the African mask and the way the woman's face is painted into her own artwork that said something new, and it looked pop and it also looked very modern. And my version on the right-hand side I did while I was in college, and I was trying to be like Miss Lois Jones. What were the things that I was attracted to? You can see those bright colors being repeated, the bright oranges, yellows, and pinks. Those are colors more reminiscent of the pop art movement, colors that you would see during the 1960s in people's clothing and in home decor. And these bright colors were also seen on the African continent in the textiles that people wore and that they wove. After my time at Howard University, I went to Montclair State to get my master's in art education. And while I was there, one of the requirements for the degree were for all students to take a fiber arts class and also a jewelry making class. So while I came out of Howard with a bachelor's degree in fine arts, I had not had experience using fabric as a basis or a medium for my artwork. At Howard, I may have added fabric onto a piece with glue, but this was the first time that I learned about the quilters and how you could make art without any canvas at all, without any glue at all, with just fabric and thread. Prior to this, I was sewing clothing for myself and for my children, but this was the first time I was using fabric to tell my own story. On the left-hand side, you see the quilts of Gee's Bend. Gee's Bend is in a community in Alabama. This community has been separated from the mainland for a very long time. It's a peninsula in some areas, but more like an island. And this community the African Americans who lived there were somewhat isolated from modernity, and they were able to hold on to some of their own customs and their own traditions. You may have heard of the people, the Gullah people, the Geechee people. They have their own dialect. They have customs, food customs, and the quilting customs that were more reminiscent of their ancestors in the Deep South, and also some of their traditions go all the way back to their ancestry in Africa. I was particularly interested in the way some of the women used their husbands' jeans or old denim in order to create these beautiful, beautiful abstract and geometric quilts. So my own interest was in portraiture, so I asked my husband for his jeans and created a portrait of an African American man using scraps of his jeans like the women of Gee's Bend used theirs. I've always stuck to what my professors talked to us about at Howard University about being proud of your race, being proud of your people, and being proud of humanity. Because to have respect for yourself as a human being is to have respect for all people. One of the people who I admired so much was Malcolm X. I felt that he was a man who came from a rough upbringing and was able to become enlightened in his spirituality in one sense. And then, even towards the end of his life, his enlightenment spread to all of humanity and was not just centered on his his people. It wasn't just centered on African American people. It wasn't just centered on Muslim people. At the end of Malcolm X's life, he was focused on creating bridges and unity between all people who wanted to work for and press for a good and decent society. I am often influenced by black and white photos. I'm interested in adding my own colors and my own textures into my artwork. So I chose this portrait of Malcolm X, and I decided to use African textiles to indicate and to illustrate that this is a man of African descent. I used what looks like a sun or a star pattern on his wrists. These stars and this sun pattern is my nod to the idea that Malcolm X was known as a black star or a black prince. I often do portraits of African American heroes. One of my huge heroes, and many people's, is Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman was a woman of deep faith and conviction, and she risked her life and limb multiple times, countless times, in order to free herself from bondage, but free her family members. And what I read is that she freed nearly, and it could even possibly be more than 300 people from slavery. She led them through the Underground Railroad, and she was able to create freedom and pathways for people when they thought they were none. As a matter of fact, I did hear that Harriet Tubman was known as the General. She was known as Moses because she was leading people to freedom, and that she wouldn't allow people to turn back. I also read that Harriet Tubman said herself that she was the only conductor of the Underground Railroad who never lost a passenger. I surrounded Miss Tubman with what looks like sunflowers, and the sunflower is a significant symbol in this artwork because the sun is also a star. As we know, there are many stars in this universe, but our closest is the sun. And those sunflowers are giving a nod to Harriet Tubman's travels north and following the North Star. I also used a dark shade that's not the typical shade that you would see of a sunflower because I want to talk about her traveling at night. I've also read that Harriet Tubman was a deeply religious and Christian woman who believed that she heard the voice of God telling her which way freedom was. And the sunflower is known as a devotional flower, as the sun moves from east to west across the sky. The sunflower, if you've ever noticed, turns itself to follow the sun as if itself is worshiping the sun. And I thought this would be a good symbol to show this woman who was so dedicated to God, and her belief and her faith was so strong. If you look at her image, I've used blues and greens on one side of her face on the left, and reds and purples on the right. I often use color to show emotion. If I use colors like red or orange, I'm thinking of fire. And what are those things that we think of with fire? You think of warmth, heat, passion, love, strength. Red for me is indicating Harriet Tubman's determination and fierce will to get freedom for herself and the people who were also held in bondage. The blue and the green side I associate with cool and calm and calculated. She also had to travel at night. She had to travel very quietly. She had to be very stealthy in her mission to free herself and free these people. So I'm using the two sides to show while she is stealthy and can be a very quiet person, she's also a very forceful and powerful person. I created this portrait of Frederick Douglass. It is now owned by the Toledo Museum of Art. And in this image, you will see a young Frederick Douglass. And it surprised me, just as it may surprise some of you, to see Frederick Douglass portrayed in this way. The portrait I came across had him looking so fiercely into the camera, and then by proxy, looking at us, looking at me. And you'll see again, I used a lot of bright reds and purples in his face because his gaze was so direct and so powerful that there was no looking away. In the time of Frederick Douglass's life, African American people were not supposed to look white people in the eyes. They were supposed to look down, and if they did look up, they should be smiling, and they should be somehow subservient in their tone and in their demeanor. But Frederick Douglass was provoking in this camera. He was in this shot. He was saying, I'm not going to look down. I'm your equal, and you will respect me as such. These photographs of Frederick Douglass were sent around the nation as carte de visite. They're actually sent around the world, and he had many supporters in Europe and elsewhere. And I became so enraptured by this photo that I wanted to create it out of fabric. And I used fabrics that demonstrated Frederick Douglass's journey. If you will look on the right-hand side, I've created this image of Frederick Douglass, but on his jacket, you'll see these green oval shapes. That's a fabric called Speedbird. And Speedbird is a fabric printed in West Africa that symbolizes wealth and prosperity. Frederick Douglass taught himself to read. Well, initially, the mistress or the enslaver's wife taught Frederick Douglass how to read. Somewhat. And then he learned a little bit more reading from street children in Baltimore, and the rest he picked up on his own. He became a famous orator, statesman, abolitionist, feminist. He was able to free himself from slavery by writing his own free papers, getting on a train, and riding that train right into New York City. So on his sleeves, I use a fabric that is known in West Africa called ABCD. And this ABCD fabric in West Africa denotes somebody who is literate and learned and proud to be so. So I thought that would be a perfect fabric to use on Frederick Douglass. The last piece I'd like to discuss with you this afternoon is a portrait that I did of Chadwick Boseman. Chadwick Boseman was my fellow classmate at Howard University, although he was a freshman when I was a senior and we were not acquainted at the time. I felt compelled to create a portrait of him because I was like many people, sad and sorry that we had lost him so soon. And I was so impressed by the career and that the dignity that he was able to carry and the impact that he was able to make on the world in his short 40-odd years. Chadwick Boseman, not only was he a student at Howard University, he was also an activist. And from what I read, he refused to take roles in Hollywood that were subservient or discriminatory and stereotypical and showed African Americans in a negative light. And as a consequence, he didn't get his breakout role until he was 40 years old when he won the role of T'Challa or the Black Panther. Around him, you will see green, lush grass, trees, and a green rainbow. I read that Chadwick Boseman had a strong faith and belief in God. He was a strong Christian follower and believer, and I wanted to show that in this background that his soul, his spirit resided in this beautiful and lush paradise forever. And what I call this piece is Forever as a nod to his Christianity, as a nod to my own belief at where his soul resides now. And it's also a nod to the saying in the movie, which I did read. He was very, very proud of his role as the Black Panther, and they would always say, Wakanda forever. And to me, that statement is almost like saying paradise forever, heaven forever. And it makes sense. It made sense that I would choose this fabric to illustrate those sayings and illustrate that belief. Again, I would like to take note of the two sides of his face. I'm always thinking about the duality. None of us are one thing all the time. There is lightness and there is dark. Even in the saddest times and in the hardest times, we look for the peace and we look for the good in the situations. So I wanted to make sure that I show those two sides to express that while we mourn the loss of Chadwick Boseman, we're also very grateful for having been able to witness his acting and witness his gift while he was with us. And I'd like to say thank you again for all of you who tuned in today, for all of you who are joining us today, and I will be back with a few answers to questions.
Thank you, Bisa. Thank you so much for your inspiring presentation. Oh, and thank you also for the powerful stories, the lessons underlying your beautiful quilts and your artistic gift. Now it's my privilege to introduce Reverend Dr. Claudio Caravalhaes, our next speaker. My name is Abigail Johnson, and I'm a member of the Mission and Community Committee at First Presbyterian and Trinity Church. A native Brazilian, Reverend Dr. Claudio Caravalhaes, an ordained pastor within the Presbyterian Church USA, is an earth thinker, theologian, liturgist, and artist. Currently, he is Associate Professor of Worship at his alma mater, Union Theological Seminary in New York City. Previously, Dr. Caravalhaes taught at McCormick Theological Seminary in Chicago, Lutheran Theological Seminary in Philadelphia, and Louisville Presbyterian Theological Seminary. A much sought after speaker, writer, and performer, Professor Caravalhaes is author of 4 books in English and 4 books plus editor of 2 in Portuguese. He has authored chapters in more than 35 edited volumes, along with more than 80 articles in refereed journals. He has given academic presentations, performances, and delivered sermons at over 50 conferences, as well as academic societies. Besides the United States, Professor Caravalhaes has lectured in Brazil, Colombia, Costa Rica, El Salvador, Canada, Germany, Belgium, the Netherlands, and Mozambique. Frank Damada, the president of McCormick Seminary, said of Dr. Caravalhaes, "I can think of few leaders in theological education who inspire like Claudia. He has been on the cutting edge of cross-cultural worship within the Presbyterian Church USA. He's a voice of liberation among communities of color, an advocate for young adults, and a prophetic presence among those who are pushing the church into the 21st century. Reverend Dr. Caravalhaes is married to Katie Perella and has 3 children. Please be reminded that if you have questions for Claudio, please put them in the chat. And welcome now our spirited pastor, professor, earth thinker, and enthusiast, Reverend Dr. Claudio Caravalhaes.
Oh, my sister, after that introduction, goodness. Woo! Thank you so much for your generosity. I so appreciate it. And before I start, that art that our sister showed to us, it's so brilliant that it made me think of the Harriet Tubman, right? And the Underground Road movement, Underground Railroad movement. And this is the song that Bigfoot, Pagfoot, Leftfoot we used to teach the people so that they will learn the map to go into freedom. So the chorus is like, follow. Follow the drinking gourd, follow the drinking gourd, for the old man is waiting for it to carry you to freedom. Follow the drinking gourd. Drinking gourd was the Big Dipper, and if they saw the Big Dipper, that's the path. And as they moved through the rivers, and the lyric shows everything. And then at the end of that journey, they would find the old man waiting for them. So that's why they kept singing it in every plantation. Follow the drinking gourd, the Big Deep. Follow the drinking gourd, for the old man is waiting for to carry you to freedom. Follow the drinking gourd. And Harriet Tubman, the Moses of that time, would come under the bushes and sing, wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. And then they would run. And that's how they will find their freedom. Hallelujah. So that art just like fills my heart with joy. Thank you, my sister. So I'm ready. And I am so delighted to be here with you all. So happy to be a part of the Zachary Yamba, Robert Manley lecture series. Grateful to the whole First Presbyterian Trinity Church, the mission and the community outreach committee, those who offer so generously to this lecture series, to the pastor of Valencia Norma, to Carol, Susan, and Abigail, and all of you who cared so deeply for this event to happen. What a joy to be here. So I pray that you continue your ministry around South Orange and caring for the place that God has put you to do a mission and to live out the tasks and demands of the Christian faith. So in my brief talk today, I want us to relate our faith with the land and how we as Christians have a full demand to be stewards of the land, to be custodians of it. I will start with a saying from the Greek philosopher Epictetus. He said, "You become what you give your attention to." You become what you give your attention to. Well, Jesus said the same thing in another way in Matthew 6:21. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also, which means where your attention is, that's where you be living in. So the question that I want to ask us today is this: what are we paying attention to these days? What did you learn throughout your life that taught you to pay attention? What are the things you deeply care about? Things that you go after, you search for, that you give your energy, your money, and your life to. What is it that you pay attention for? And asking the other way, where have you given your heart to? So if people, then I'll learn the question and then ask, do you pay attention to any tree? Do you pay attention to the river near your community?
Claudio, can you hear us? We may have to ask him to not have his video.
I think we may have lost him, actually. I think he may have.
I think he logged out. He might, I'm hoping he's gonna log back in.
Should we ask him to keep the video off, or?
Keep the video off and just use the audio for
Yes, I
now.
believe he's back.
Back. I'm waiting for his audio to connect. All I see is his video. I need his audio to connect.
My friends, I'm sorry, I don't know. My internet dropped me and just disappeared from me. So I'm gonna change here and I'm coming to right under the router so I won't miss you. I'm so sorry. I don't know how much I have spoken.
You were asking us what we pay attention to.
All right, Susan, that's it. Okay, let's keep going there. So then the question for you would be, besides paying attention to the internet, right, so that we won't lose it, what else do we pay attention to? Do you pay attention to any tree around your house? The rivers next to your church? The chipmunks, the wild rabbit, the squirrel, the topsoil. Have you ever paid attention to those things? And I ask them, my friends, because I have to tell you, I never pay attention to this until very recently. I thought things were there because they were just there, and they would always be there, until I start to realize that they will not be always there. So I started to think about the ways in which I pay attention, and I pay attention to what. And so in that sense, what are the senses of my body that are attuned to? So what do I see? What do I touch? What do I smell? What do I taste? What do I hear? Do I see the suffering of the river? Do I taste the soil when I am eating food? Do I smell? Do I stop to smell a flower? Touch the ground underneath? Hear the singing of the birds? And here's one thing, my friends. What we pay attention to is directly proportional to things that we don't pay attention to. They're equally important. What we pay attention to relates to the things that we deeply care, cultivate. The things that we don't pay attention to, the things that we don't care, we don't cultivate, we don't mind. So I never pay attention to the rivers, so I couldn't care less about the life of the river. I couldn't care less about the lives of the fish. I couldn't care less about the lives of trees, because they are all, those things, trees, if I take one tree or not, they're just decoration. Then things start to change in me. But I had to make a big move. Because I haven't heard, I don't know about you, but I haven't received a Christian faith that taught me about sensing, pay attention to those things. And as Christians, we are supposed to witness the life and love of Jesus Christ to the world, which means that we must pay attention to our society. And then how we respond to the issues of inequality, poverty. How do our churches relate to the redlining and the structures of racism in our neighborhood? I'm not saying here that we have to solve all the problems, but how do we witness, pay attention, and try to respond to those troubles at a local level? What are the landscapes, the ecosystems of our bioregion? How much we pay attention both to human and more than human beings around us? You see, that is confusing sometimes for us Christians, because we don't know exactly where our spirituality lives. In the Holy Spirit, right? But where is the Holy Spirit? Where is God? God is inside of us, or is it outside? Or if it is outside, is where? Is it in that river, but is it in that tree? Or is it in that people, or is it not? And we are somewhat confused. Is God in heavens, in us, all the time with us, or not always? God is in nature, but where is nature? I say all of this, my friends, as a call, when I'm asking us to consider what we pay attention to, I'm asking us to consider life as a whole, not as detached, not as partial things. For instance, when you're going to, if we are to pay attention to traffic in our cities, it is not only about what kind of light we are going to put in that or that street. No, we have to consider the schools. We have to consider the peak hours. We have to consider the movement of people. We have to consider the commerce or not. We have to consider so many things. So when we consider our faith, we have to consider our entire region, our entire bioregion, and our bodies. Because our bodies and the body of the earth are just one thing. And that's what colonialism did to us, to rip us apart. It took our bodies away from the land, and now we feel as we are foreigners to the land, or sometimes even foreigners to our own bodies. And why do you need to pay attention to this, my friends? Because we are upon a very dangerous time that is going to increase in its dangerous moments. The climate change is upon us. Climate disasters, to say it properly. Climate disasters are upon us. With global warming, the extinction of so many species. Everywhere, the melting of the ice. You know, the Arctic now is burning. The Arctic. There's so much going on that is shifting and changing what we have always taken for granted. And the ways in which we have done it is by extracting everything. We desire, we have it. We want this, we have it. And we don't have any respect for any other species. We can just catch them, put them in cages, kill them as much as we want. For instance, let me show you a video that will tell us how we deal with fishing in the sea. I think I have the right to share my screen, right? Can somebody give me the right to share my screen, please? See? Can somebody give me the ability to share my screen? I don't know who's in charge of it.
Nena, are you there?
If not, I can
Yeah.
move on. And Susan, when it's ready, you let me know. Okay? All right. The way we relate to the land, without any relation, in fact, the way that we relate is by establish a non-relationship, or a relationship that will just organize it in one way: extraction. That's what capitalism has taught us, to extract. So we extract everything. We extract everything for our desires. The ways that we work, companies extract everything from us. Extract our health, extract our spirit. No wonder the big issues of our time, health issues of our time, are panic attacks and depression. Because we give it up, we give it, because the system takes everything away from us. And that's where we live, that's how we live. And because we wrestle with the ways in which we take everything out of the land has a limit. We learned, and that's capitalism teaching us we have no limits. We want to have all the energy we want. We want to have all kinds of brands we want, 30 types of cereals, perhaps 50. We want to have strawberries in the thick of the winter. We don't pace with the land. We pace with our desires. And that's, my friend, the big, big shift, is to move from the pace of our desires to the pace of the land. Have you tried to eat with what is around your area? What your land can give to you? I did it to my wife, with my wife from Central PA. And I tell you, that's cold there, right? The repetition of potatoes and tomato. It's enormous. There was a time I said, I can't eat this anymore. Can't stop. While the supermarket was full of all those deliciousness, we had to stock with what the local farmers could give to us. It changed my life, my perception of the land. Because I was bound by the love of the land and not by the consumerism of the supermarket. United States, we are 4% of the entire global population of 8 billion people. We're 4%. You know how much we use as natural resources? 44%. We are 4%, using almost 50% of the entire resources of the land. Don't you think there's no pace, the earth cannot give it all. So my friends, I ask us to pay attention to the land. That's all I'm asking us to do today, to pay attention to the land. The land, the older we are, the more connected to the land we are. I mean, my mother grew up taking care of her siblings while my grandparents worked in the land for somebody else. And she worked when she was 6 years old, picking up coffee. She knows the land. She sings to her plants every morning. She prays with them. Something that as a kid growing up, my mom, talking to plants. Now I understand. Took me 50 years, my friends, to understand that. I'm 53 now. Took me 50 years. And now I'm saying, how can I relate? Now when I walk on the street, I can see that there are other living beings, that the tree is a living being that also needs my honor, my blessing. The birds need my blessing, and so I go around, pay attention to the birds. And so I saw this video, my friends, too, that really deeply moved me about a community in the northeast of Brazil. I'm not going to bother you. I had so much information about what scientists are telling us about the top of 1.5 Celsius warming, and how this will destroy so many things, and how we are not doing anything at this point of disruption, of impact, and we need to talk about adaptation. That's the word, my friends, that you're going to have it buzzing in us, to adapt to the new time. But it is a time that we do not know, because we don't know what it is to have a temperature that's 1.5 Celsius. That is higher, that's much high temperature. We don't know. The storms are going to be different. The topsoil is going to be different. The species are going to be different. We don't know. But there's an increasing urgency. Everything is not for, before I used to read this, okay, in 100 years, the earth might have something. No, we are talking about now, my friends. You and me we're already seeing it. We're already seeing it everywhere. Look at California. Look at Germany not long ago. Africa is the place that is suffering the most. The island in Indonesia, the islands of the Pacific, they have 60 years of life left for them. 60 years, and they're going to be gone because of climate change. So it's the necessary thing to do is now. But in order to do that, we need to go and live with the pace of the land, having a relationship with everything that the land gives to us. So let me show you this video of this community in Brazil. When the fisher, they don't do this vast capitalistic amount of fishing. They go with a small fish net. And when they catch the fish, oops, that's the sound of it. When they catch the fish, look what they do. Helping the fish to die. It's a kind of a contradiction, but it's beautiful how they care for the fish. As I asked you, my friends, did you see they were like resting in the water? Because those waters were not foreign. Just like those boats that goes over seas and couldn't care less about the sea. Those waters gave them rest, food, drinking, medicine, relation. See, I look at the Hudson River here. What do we know about the Hudson River? I ask my students here, ask myself. We're just like one block from it. And all we know is the name. It's not a living thing. It's not a living being. It's not something that we are meant to care, relate, honor, bless. Oh, but Claudio, then we'll be doing something wrong because only God is to be honored. Yeah, that's why one of the reasons we have no relation with anything. But you know what? If you're reformed, you know the catechism, the Westminster Catechism says this, that the first article says that the purpose of our life is to honor God and enjoy God forever. But what is God, my friends? Is this spirit somewhere? Is this white guy with the white beard hanging in the clouds? Who's God? Oh, my friends, if we are to enjoy God, God is everywhere. God is the presence of life bursting everywhere, reconnecting us to ourselves, to one another, and to the land. God is the symbiosis that happens between species and within the limits of these relations. As theologian Sally MacFaig said, the earth is the body of God. Thus, to glorify God is to care for God's body. To enjoy God forever is to relate to the beauty of the earth where we live. We are here to pay attention to all forms of lives on earth, but especially where we live. We are called to look after all things that live on earth. People and more than human. Everything that live on earth and under the sky, but mostly in that area where we call our patch of land, the place we call ourselves at home. So our Christian faith, while global, universal, has to find its expressions in the land where we inhabit. We don't own the land. That's another plague, the notion of private property. That's what the plague that shifted the indigenous form of relating to the land. We don't own the land, my friends. The land owns us. So we do have to pay attention to the homes, to the people suffering, to the streets, give them love and kindness and shelter and find justice. But we also have to be attentive to the conditions of the land near us. Is the topsoil still alive where you live? What are the ways in which the rivers are living? Are we polluting all of our aquifers of the earth? Where does the garbage and toxic dump go to? You see, garbage doesn't disappear. We put in a plastic bag and put into outside and somebody come collect, but it doesn't disappear. It just go elsewhere. Where does it go? We have to pay attention. Every single bottle of something, every plastic bag, it will go somewhere and stay there, and some of the things will stay there for ages. Do you know the scientists are now saying that the new babies are being born with plastic inside of their bodies? Because they're all eating things that has plastic, tiny pieces of plastic, because plastic's inside of fish, inside of other, because the ocean, there's an enormous part of the ocean that is already dead, with mountains of plastic floating. But we don't see, we don't perceive. We don't perceive, we don't pay attention. That's how we do. So my friends, how do we start? I think that we have to start collectively, always collectively. Dealing with the anxiety of these times, we have to care for each other and be together. The best thing to do is to be together. The other thing is, how do we engage with our bioregion, which are with our patch of land? Susan has already doing a wonderful job taking care of so many things and working with rivers and so many other things. But you know what we can do in our worship? Prayers and songs can change us. You see, Brazilian theologian Rubem Alves, he says this beautiful thing. He says, he's dead now, but he used to say this, and I love it. Every garden begins with a love dream. Oh, every garden begins with a love dream. Before any tree is planted or any lake built or cared, it is necessary that trees and lakes and rivers be born first within our soul. So I want to ask you, my friends, is there a river in your heart? Ken, my sister, is there a tree in your heart? Is there a river in your heart? Oh, if we do that, if we can preach about the rivers being born, you see, there is so much about rivers in the Bible. Just like Revelation, there is a tree that flows from the throne of God. And you know where this tree goes? That this river that comes from the throne of God? Right into the river next to your house. You see, the Hudson River, it's a manifestation of that river that starts in the throne of God. There's still time for us to do something. We will not be able to prevent all the disasters, but we can do something. Like this indigenous thinker Tyson Yunkaporta says, I cannot hear the frogs because the bulldozer are just next to me, but I can still see the flowers. My friends, I ask you just this in our close. Change our attention, change our perception, and start to learn what it means to live according to the law of the land. Because God gave us the law of the land first. Before the Bible or anything, the land was what God created first. The law of the land is our first law to follow. What is the law of the land where you live? What is it saying to us? How can we tend, care, sustain, protect, love, care? The earth gives us so much. We have to establish a relation of reciprocity with the land. You know what indigenous people do? Every time they're going to get something, they ask for permission. If you haven't read this book, Bless Me Ultima, it is about this grandmother teaching her grandson how to learn the richness and the mysteries of the land. And she goes along with him into the field, and he plucks something and says, hey, did you ask the land, can I take this? That's a relationship. And that relationship, the older generations have. I don't. I grew up in the jungle in São Paulo, in the jungle of concrete. I must confess, I'm way more comfortable within the midst of concrete. You throw me in the midst of the trees and I get all anxious because I have no idea how even to walk. If you take me 10 minutes into the woods and you leave, I'm gonna die there. Because I have no idea how to see the sun, how to see the left from the right, north, south. You know what I know? I know how, but put me into any city and I'll take you to any bus, any subway, because that I know. You know, I was a pastor in Brazil in this rural community, and one thing that the kids love to do is to make fun of me. We would go visit people in the afternoon, Sunday afternoon. I would spend the whole day there, and they will along the way they would say, "Pastor, what tree is that?" I said, "Is that orange?" Then they go, "Quack, quack, 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 quack. It's mango." And then we go, "What is this?" And I say, "Mangoes." "No, it's apple," because I had no idea. My friends, we need to know. You know what I do? There's an app now in my phone that I take a picture, and now I know. Oh, my favorite tree is an oak tree right here next to my house, and I go pray there all the time. See, we have to learn the ways in which the people of the land knows how to organize themselves through the land. There is a reason why African churches worship under the tree. Because God lives in the tree. It's not only about the shade, it is about the connection with the tree who points to heaven, who connects to hold God's love. What have we done to this gospel? We love concrete, do we? Oh, you know, I'm Presbyterian from when I grew up. You know something that makes Presbyterians very excited? Build a wall. Woo, they're gonna give their money to build a wall. Build another room for something and give the name of somebody. Woo, they're gonna do it. But and I'm saying this because I'm Presbyterian. That's why I think I can, because we all of this. But trying to say, let's do a garden. I say, garden for what? What's it for? What is it going to do? Let's go to the river. Let's go down to the river, as the spirituals say, and pray there. Say, that's not Christian. Friends, I'll stop here. I have so much more to talk, and I'm all fired up. But I'd rather stop here, and let's get into conversation. Will be much better. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Claudio and Bisa, for your wonderful presentations. It has been very, very lovely hearing from both of you from different sides, but also the same side of what we are talking about today, fabric of community, a focus on earth, life, and healing. I want to start because Claudio, you did a wonderful job of making a connection with Bisa's pieces by starting us out with the two spirituals that you shared with us, speaking on the drinking gourd and wade in the water. And something that stood out to me with that is the fact that those so clearly tied in nature and being attentive to nature, but they're also works of art, they're songs. So both Claudio and Bisa, can you guys share a bit on your thoughts on the role of art and the way that that plays into nurturing and supporting the earth, life, and healing?
Yes. I don't know if maybe you want to go to something, you want me to respond how we go about this teaching?
So Bisa, can you start because you spoke first, and then Claudio, you can respond as well. Thank you.
Sure. And I wanted to say I really enjoyed your talk, Claudio. It made me think a lot. And I like that you were able to give us the song, but then also the truth. And I feel like I do the same with my artwork. I want people to know what the truth is, even if the truth is not the truth that you want to hear. It's not always going to be easy, but it doesn't mean that there aren't moments where we can step away and enjoy beauty at the same time. And Chichi, I was thinking about with my own artwork, quilting in its essence came from people who had necessity to be warm. And traditionally for African Americans, the quilts usually would be leftover cloth that have been worn many, many times by family members. So it's another transformative thing because this cloth was considered trash. You know, it was considered worn out. These clothes can't be, the pants are there's so many holes in them that they're no longer holding together. And whole communities would put aside all of those bits of cloth and then get together and decide to have a quilting circle. And that would be a number of men, women, and children who would take those scraps that everybody from the community had donated and make quilts to cover one family. They might make 3 quilts for that family, and it would be a round robin. Then they would go to the next family and begin again with the scraps and make enough quilts to cover and keep warm that family, and so on and so on. So that thing that they used, their clothing, it was considered trash. It was no longer good, had a second life and a third life, that it not only kept the families warm, but people started creating designs with their quilts and being inspired by their home lives in Africa, and also being inspired by the nature around them, being inspired by the community. And so I find that quilting, I think, is a type of art that it can make that circle complete, from the planting of the cloth, if it was cotton, or the wool that was shaved off of the sheep, woven into fabric. It was used as clothing, got worn out, then it was used again as a quilt. It was worn out. And then some of these quilts, even those worn out old quilts, you'll see them on walls in museums now. So they still become something of value.
Oh, I love that, Bisa, because what Bisa gives to us is what this lecture is about, the fabric of life.
Mm-hmm.
And fabric, and if you pay attention to her, she started to weave, to use the same notion of sewing, to weave one fold of the quilt into another fold, into another fold. You see how she said that the land, the sheep,
Mm-hmm.
the people, the community,
Mm-hmm.
the sewing. the getting together. See, that's the beauty. I have just this piece of cloth, but Bisa has another one. And then we put it together. And then we can make a blanket for a child. Oh, you see? Oh, it just gives me goosebumps. And that's the power of art, to make us pay attention to layers and layers of truth, of life. And that's what Bisa gave us with her pieces. See, each piece is a complex piece of many worlds around. And that's what I hope the Christian faith would do. Every worship service will be this sewing of many worlds together in one piece called worship. You see, when you get that, she has the artist, but she doesn't have the artist only. She has what influenced her. She has the tonalities, and each tonality of the paint means some kind of world. And that in relation to this, in relation to this, in relation to this, becomes this. So I hope that our life will be about storytelling of many worlds together. You see, the worlds of human beings, but the worlds of trees, the worlds of seeds, the worlds of water, the worlds of the worlds of birds, the worlds of worms. I would hope that all of this complex, because we think that we are individuals that are just identities. Oh, I am Claudio from Brazil, and married or not. Well, no, you know, our bodies, my friends, is made of, there are more non-human cells in me than human. I am more non-human that helps me to be human. That's the wonder of nature. When Bisa brings Tubman, and I'm so glad to see that, because, you know, the Underground Railroad was only possible because of the land. See, the only way to find your freedom was through the land. Follow the drinking gourd. It's all about the land. Follow the big deep, and the letter will say there's two, because it's for people in Mobile and Alabama. So follow the two rivers. When the two rivers end, there's another river. There will be dead trees. Keep on going. And then there is going to be somebody there waiting for you to take you home. For the old man is waiting to carry you home. Follow the drinking gourd. See, without nature, there wouldn't be escape. There wouldn't be freedom. That's one of, but see what capitalism does to us? How much it was the land who gave us the escape, the lines of fugue. But now how much we don't have any land on us. You know how's it called, my friends? Colonization. We are still all colonized. As long as we don't talk about the land, we are still colonized. Because you know what colonization is? It's to reap people away from the land. When I think that where I live, I just consider in terms of profit of the house, in terms of neighborhood, in terms of education, in terms of who's my neighbor, in terms of what commerce is next to my house. That's all we talk about when you talk about a house. You never talk about the earth who lives there. Now I try to teach my children. We are a full community here. There's chipmunks, there's mice, there's birds, there's worms, there's plants, There are trees. All of this compose our community. So in that way, my friends, I'm never alone. I'm never alone. I live on the 5th floor here in New York now. And yesterday, a little tiny thing flew into my hand. Before I would say, whoa, go away from me. Now I was able to, who are you? I'm not saying everything to everything. One thing that God has not changed my heart was about cockroaches. I kill them mercilessly, but I cannot deal with cockroaches. I confess, I cannot. And mice, I still struggle, but I'm trying to see in what ways we are all related.
So that brings me up a question that is in the chat. How can we share this idea of taking care of the land with the community? Claudio, would you like to give us a something that comes to mind quickly? You mentioned sharing a bit with your children, some of the lessons that you're trying to teach them that we could use to translate to the community.
Yeah, very quickly. Teach the church, not only the kids, the adults, to relate. Do worship service outside, next to a tree. When you do baptism, bring the water from the river. You know, my student did, I asked them to do some project at church, and what she did, she wanted to do the baptism and a renewal. She went to the river and got the water, but the water is so filthy dirt. She poured it into the baptismal font, and everybody saw this smelly, dirty, awful water coming into the baptismal font, which was a bowl, a transparent bowl. And then she put her, leaves inside and said, I'm gonna bless you with the water. Literally, people run away from the church. People got up and run away. For churches, if we don't relate water of baptism with waters of the river, communion, bread and wine coming from the top soil. You know who pick our bread and grapes? Undocumented immigrants that we do not want anything to do with them. But they are the ones who make the most sacred part of our worship, right? That's how we start to relate. Relate to communities next to you. Who are the societies that are taking care of the rivers next to you? Who are taking care of the trees, of the birds, of who are going against those who are polluting our neighborhoods? Relate, my friends, relate.
Thank you so much, Claudio. We are running a bit short on time, so I do want to make sure that we're able to get to a few more questions before we close. Our next question will be for Bisa. Bisa, can you speak to the size of your portraits, the motivation of their being life-size, and share a bit about your process while creating? What inspires you to pick your portraits? Are you working on several portraits at once? Anything else you'd like to share?
I originally started making portraits of my family members. And then that family spread out to my community, like my coworkers at, you mentioned, actually Susan mentioned that I taught for 10 years in Newark Public Schools. So it was fellow teachers, administrators, they would ask me to make quotes of their family members. And that spread now when I decided that I wanted to exhibit in museums and at big fairs, I thought, let me go back to my community. What is it that I want to say? And I started looking at vintage black and white photos of the community, things and people who have been forgotten and passed over. And one of the reasons why I like to make my artwork life-size is because it came from a sense of longing, looking at these black and white photos, thinking about who is this lovely couple all dressed up, and now they're just here dusty in a database. A lot of the photos I look at are from the 40s. It's not that long ago. My parents were born in the 40s. or close to the 40s. And World War II, that whole era is a big part of our collective memory. So how can these lovely Black people have been forgotten? And yet their pictures remain in the National Archives. Online, if you search the word Negro, you're gonna come up about 40,000 images of just random Black people taken at different stages. Sometimes it was during the Depression. Sometimes photos are taken, a lot of them were taken during wartime, World War I and II. Just as a survey, let's see how the people are doing. How are the poor people living? How are the people who are of need living, but not actually to help them. The government was just trying to see how it was going. And so I think that my desire to make the quilts life-size is for me to bring those people back. Let's have a reintroduction. Now that I'm seeing this black and white photo, who are these people? What do they have to say? What are the lessons that have been forgotten that we might be able to glean by looking at this portrait?
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Response. Does anyone in the audience have any questions?
Let me come in here, Chichi, to raise this question for our two speakers. Any of them, but Claudio, in your remarks, you mentioned Africa and Indonesia in terms of these two areas being in trouble. Several years ago, when I brought students to Ghana for cultural immersion, I warned them that when we go to the coastal areas on Tuesdays, they won't find someone fishing. They would have to see to believe. Why? Because the Ghana people, especially the coastal areas, know that the sea is an organism that should be left to rest on Tuesdays. Number one. Number two, we want to watch fisherfolk drawing their nets. And what you realize that they will meticulously take time to throw the baby fish back into the sea. So there will be fish tomorrow. Now, globalization, industrialization is telling me my ancestors were pagan, were heathen, were uncivilized. They have to copy from the West. Where does that lead us? Any comment from any of you?
Ooh, my brother. Ooh. I am a firm believer that unless we learn back from the people that we try to kill, we won't have any future. If we are to survive, we have to go back to the people of the land and learn, because they know the law of the land. Just from what you're saying, my brother, just from what you're saying, you gave us two examples, but changes entirely everything. Then yes, we went into demonizing everything and call everything pagan, to the point that now we still have a problem relating to the land and the other beings because we're afraid of being pagans or not being faithful. I think we need two things. We need to unlearn some of the Christian faith. And we need to relearn the ways of the land. And I think that the people from Africa, those communities, the indigenous people and people who live with the land, they are the ones to teach us what we need to learn right now. And for me, this is one of the way out. Otherwise we have no future.
Bisa, any comment before we have the closing?
I just wanted to make sure that I said thank you to all of you, because I really enjoyed the conversation. I enjoyed Claudio's presentation and the questions that you all have brought up. Thank you, Reverend Adam and Susan and my father, Dr. Yamba, Chichi, and all of the members of the community.
Hello.
And I want to
What else
close
can
with a word of thank you all. And to see Bisa's work I was blown away. Thank you.
what else can we say but to say thank you? Thank you, my dinos. One language means we wish you life and good health to enjoy the life. But so when this program was initiated 7 years ago, when the session of the church approved it, we did not know where we were going, but we knew what we wanted to do. And they be the 7th one. And we honor these two great people who have contributed so much to this generation and for posterity. I have been proud to know these two people, Dr. Yamba and I call Papa, and seeing Bisa growing up, amazing for my daughter, my Professor Manley. What else can we say? To thank and honor them. The two speakers, Bisa, Claudio, what else can we say? Amazing presentations. And the laws, if you didn't hear and listen, but I believe you had the recording for you. Thank you, the committee that put this together. It hasn't been easy sometimes. Odd hours across the seas, but we made it. After this point, the session of the congregation. Chichi, I have always believed that when we talk about the young adult being the future leaders, I say they are the current leaders, because they remind us to do what we need to do to preserve what we need to preserve for posterity. So Chichi, when we drew in, we knew what we were doing. And Chichi and Nina, the two of you young adults, Nina being a technical person behind the scene, and Chichi, your sharp wit, I've traveled with you, and I know that the sky is the limit in terms of where you can go. So thank you, the committee members. And finally, what can we say or do without our dear pastor, my sister Valencia, who will give us the closing prayer. Hi, sis, where are you? Go ahead.
Here I am, and I am sitting in the sanctuary, and I was running late because we were at a flag raising for the people of Ukraine in my township. So that was my delay, and yet I was here to hear the presentations. And I just said, for listening to Bisa, that idea of respect for our subjects just came across to me. And that's one of the first steps that we can ever have when we're trying to heal relationships to the land. And then Claudio, my brother Claudio, Union Theological Seminary graduate. 1997, I'm telling, but God bless you, and especially your idea of that for us, pacing with the land and not just with our desires, and being able to adapt and really rethinking our idea of what it means to be a Christian community. And it does begin with, and God created. And when God created, we were not made to become landowners over the land, but become land keepers. And we have missed our calling if we do not return back to that. So God bless you in this wonderful conversation. I just love you. I just love both of you guys for the beauty that you're creating, giving us this message of healing and hope, especially in this time that we are listening to signs of war and the sounds of war. And so this is what we need. We need to hear about healing in our land. So I'm going to just offer up these words of prayer and benediction for you. And so God, walk us into this realm of possibilities. Help us to stand in your presence upon the holy mountain so that we can see the sign of peace flowing down like the river. Let us watch it as we can also look for the signs of a dove bringing peace to our land, and help us as your peacekeepers to be the lords of creation, that we can help the world to see how to stay in relationship with the world. And so I leave you with this benediction that I saw the people spilling from this place into the streets where the world walks. And they were proclaiming the eternal gospel to every nation and tribe of people in every tongue. And they were honoring God, making songs of hallelujahs to the heaven, earth, and sea. And because of this, they were able to call to one another, I see you, my neighbor. So let us go into this holy time as we dwell together, full of the grace and full of the truth as it was in the beginning, that we are together as land creatures and heavenly creatures, and that we live and we die together. So let it be. Amen. Amen. Thank you all.
Ooh, that was powerful.
Eugene, so
Thank
good
you.
to see you.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
of you
Hillary, what a
people.
powerful
I'm
message.
so excited.
Thank you. So blessed to see you all.
Yes.
Blessings to you, and thank you
Yes.
for the witness
Thank you.
and the testimony of this church and you all. I thank God for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. My brother in Ghana.
Thank you.
Good to you.
Obrigada.
Thank you.
Sister.
Obrigada. Obrigada.
He's gonna go nighty night.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Yes.
much.
Obrigada,
Thank you.
Claudio.
Claudio.
Thank you,
Thank
Manley.
you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Susan.
Kathy.
Thank you, Miss Abigail.
Bye,
Mr. Claudio,
Chichi.
thank you. It was so lovely
And we
being part
honor
of this.
you, Professor
you.
Yamba.
Thank you, Chi
Yes.
Chi.
Yes,
Papa
thank you all.
Yamba, Professor Manley, thank all of you.
Yes, and Professor,
Okay.
we do thank you all. God bless and keep
Bye-bye.
you all.
Amen.
Bisa, Jess, I'm so excited. I can now see you on my screen. I'm scrolling.
Yes, thank you, Reverend.
I want you to
Bye-bye.
know that
Hello,
my
Papa.
neighborhood
Thank you.
for
Good to see you.
Valentine's Day made little
Look
gifts
at that.
with a little cloth
That
for the
picture.
children to make their own little pattern.
Oh, wow. I
Yeah.
love that. I
Yeah.
love it.
Nice.
Yes.
Very excited. Very excited.
Okay. Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Everyone, have a
Bye.
great week. Bye.
Oh.
Wonderful
Guys, I'm
program.
gonna
Bye.
end the meeting now. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for
Bye,
joining.
everyone. Take
Thank
care.
you, Nina,
Have
for
a
the
great
support.
week.
Thank you. Hi, Chichi. Bye-bye.